Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Be Productive, hosted by business strategist and productivity expert Clara Capano. Join us to discuss the most critical issues affecting our businesses with a fresh, practical, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Be Productive starts right now.
Things that we really need to know. And we have a wonderful episode for you today. We're going to be talking about data mapping. We want to be able to lay out and really create a strong plan and map out our path to success. We are going to be talking about how do we create long-term sustainability. We don't want to have success just this year. We want to create that dynamic year in and year out. We're going to talk about how we can leverage technology because we know that that's a big part of being able to grow and scale. And then also, what is it we need to track so that we can really pay attention to what is working and what isn't working. So grab some notepad and we're going to be taking lots of notes. You're going to want to be able to walk away from this with so many tips because we are going to be delivering value. So stay tuned because we'll be right back for more Be Productive. Welcome back to Be Productive. You know, when we talk about systems and having everything in alignment, we might want to also go through some exercises from the mental perspective to help, again, make sure that everything is aligned the way it needs to be. So in this next segment, we're going to talk about mapping. We're going to talk about data mapping and how laying out our data and mapping us out for success can lead to our higher levels of productivity. So to help me with this is my friend, Greg Schaffer. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Clara. Thanks.
You bet. So I'm excited to hear a little bit about this. So talk to us a little bit about data mapping and what data mapping really even is.
There's different ways to describe it: data mapping, data flow diagram, data flow mapping diagram, that sort of thing. But basically, they're all accomplishing the same thing. And there's several things that we need to understand in information security and with our data. So we need to understand where the confidential information is, first of all. We need to understand how it flows from system to system. We need to understand how it's protected in the system and how it's processed in the system. We need to understand how it's reported from the system and who has access and why. And we need to also understand how, when, and why the data is destroyed. And that's very important as well, too. We always say that if you don't need to keep the data, then there's no reason to have it because you're spending time, money trying to map it, trying to protect it. So a data flow diagram, which is the way that I like to refer to it as, again, mapping works as well, too. It allows for analysis of what we call controls at each stage of the map. So what I mean by controls are, these are elements that we put in place to protect both the security and the privacy of our data throughout the entire life cycle, because there's this mantra in information security and privacy is that you can't protect what you don't know about. And basically, a data flow diagram mapping exercise doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to include all of the information that you have that's necessary for your organization and where it lies, basically.
Yeah. What I think is so critical about this is, when I work with my people and take them through the Clarity Success method, one of the things we talk about is the importance of tracking and measuring. And kind of what you just said, if you don't know what to track, how are you going to know if you're moving forward? And it's very similar to what you're saying too. And going through these exercises are going to help you make sure that you have the right things in place. And that, again, I love what you talked about when you get to a point where you don't need a system. Let's make sure that we, terminate it the right way, because we still want to be able to protect all of those things. Because if we have those folders still open, things could seep in or seep out. So let's, again, get the closure that we need. So how do we start to pair all this together? And how does this mapping, how do we mirror this and align this with compliance to make sure that we're staying in compliance with everything?
So a lot of times when we talk about data mapping and data flows, we're referencing one particular regulation which sort of made this popular. I don't know if popular is exactly the right word, but maybe more well known. And that is what we call the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. It's a European regulation, but there are similar privacy regulations in the United States. It's growing. The first one was the CCPA, which I believe is the California Consumer Privacy Act, if I got my acronyms correct. So it's important to understand, first of all, the differences between privacy and security. A lot of times people use those terms interchangeably, which is not correct. They definitely have overlaps, but security is the protection of the information to ensure its what we call confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. Privacy is how you use the information. So what I mean by that is that here, one of my kind of go-to examples is if you work in healthcare, from a security standpoint, you have access to patient information, and there may be a celebrity in the hospital, for example, and that's all fine and good. But if you don't have a reason to access that celebrity's medical data, you can't access. So from a security standpoint, you have access, but from a privacy standpoint, you're not allowed to. And
Okay.
so what the mapping then does is that the data flow mapping answers several questions along the who and the how and the why. So the who is, well, who has access to the data first and where is it stored? That's what the mapping exercise helps us to determine. Who needs to have access to that data and who is sending the data and where are they sending it to? And then the how are they sending and how are they storing the data? That's the protection aspect. And the why. And probably the why is the most important here. That's the why are you keeping this data? Well, what are the uses for the data? We get back to what we just mentioned a few minutes ago, that if you don't have a need to keep data, then you don't want to keep it. There's no business reason. You're taking on risk without reward. Now,
Mhm.
finally, there's also within these data privacy regulations something that is commonly referred to as the right to be forgotten. And what that refers to is that if you have my personal data rather in your system and you don't need it anymore, I can request from you that you remove that data.
Mhm.
So how do you remove that data if you don't know where it is? And that's where the mapping comes into play.
Yeah, really great. What a great example that you gave with the healthcare and really bringing this all together and identifying the difference between the security and the privacy. One of the things that you talk about is really getting clear on both identifying the information we need, but then also knowing what and how to protect things. So as we're putting these processes together, describe a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that people face in putting these different processes together.
Well, without a doubt, I believe the primary challenge that every business faces, and especially in small and mid-sized businesses, is understanding where your information is. And again, I stress that we can't protect what we don't know about. Now, why is that a challenge? A lot of times, small and mid-sized businesses, they're very flexible, and sometimes departments will go and engage with service providers to do some sort of business need. It's just easier. Like for a common example is, I need to share a file with someone, so I'm going to get a subscription for my department to Dropbox. Well, if the central organization doesn't know about it, then how can they include that in the data mapping to begin with? You could have very sensitive information being passed through a Dropbox or other shared medium that you don't know about. And your data mapping exercise then becomes, I won't say useless, but certainly not complete. And a not complete data mapping exercise results in gaps. And we all know that gaps then can result in bad things, particularly if those gaps lead to risks that are then exploited. So everything begins with an asset inventory. We want to make sure that we're inventorying all of our assets. And this isn't just the systems involved. The more important part is information is an asset. A lot of people don't think of information as an asset, but for your business, it's probably
Mhm.
one of the, if not the most important asset that you have. So again, the mapping exercise will help identify it. So it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. You want to identify what information do we have? Well, we know that we take credit cards, for example, so we have cardholder data. Okay, that's great. Now we need to figure out where the cardholder data is. Now, all of this involves understanding the company's business processes. And as a virtual CISO, that's one of the things I emphasize, that when we start the data mapping exercise, I don't start by going into the technical aspects of it first. I don't even ask about what information do you have. I ask, what does your business do? And then from there, I'll ask, well, how do you do it? Okay, well, you have a service that provides this. What kind of information are we talking about? What happens to that information? Where does it go? Because again, the other aspect where I was talking about the Dropbox example, we have a name for that in information security and information technology. We call that shadow IT. And that's information technology that's not managed centrally by the organization. It can lead to significant problems. And so if you have an information security officer or a vCISO that says that you shouldn't use like a Dropbox solution like that, and I don't mean to be railing on Dropbox, that's just the example that came to my mind. They're a great organization. But it's not that we're trying to get you not to do something that you need to do for your business. We're always trying to get you to do something for your business in the least riskiest way.
Yeah. And, one of the things I appreciate so much about what you do, Greg, is, you hear this term cybersecurity. And even that term can instill fear and uncertainty. And because you are an expert and because you've been doing this for so long, you make it simple. You make it less adverse, and you really start to make people feel more comfortable with it so they can build the right systems. So tell us a little bit about, your company, how long you've been doing this and where people can find you.
So vCISO Services, that stands for Virtual Chief Information Security Officer Services, has been in existence since 2017 is when I founded the company. And my mission was very simple. I wanted to help small and mid-sized businesses with their information security needs because they need to have access to the same type of experience that the big businesses have, the chief information security officers, but they don't have the resources to pay nor need to pay for a full-time salary. And we've been in business since 2017. We are located just south of Nashville in Franklin, Tennessee, but we have clients throughout the United States and beyond. And probably the best way to reach us is on our website at www.vcisoservices.com. There's a button up top that says schedule an appointment or something along those lines. If you click in that button, you'll get on my calendar instantly and we'll have a 15-minute talk.
Beautiful. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time today. And for all of you that are out there watching and following, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid about and get yourself overwhelmed. When you work with an expert like Greg, they're going to make it simpler because they're going to walk you through the steps to make sure, again, you are very clear on the information you need and how to protect that information. So stay tuned. We'll be right back for more Be Productive. Welcome back to Be Productive. One of the things we do on this show is not just talk about ways to increase our productivity, but it's how do we create long-term sustainable businesses. And you cannot do that. You cannot be productive unless you have a solid strategic plan. This is something that I talk about ad nauseum with my clients. I do workshops on it, and it's something that we need to make sure we are following. And to help me talk about the importance and some of the key attributes in a solid strategic plan, I have my friend Rob Tritt with a partnership group like no other that is here to be your partner in success in creating your plan. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clara. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
I love the way that you bring in and that you really sit down with your clients to, again, go deeper in examining not just their goals, but their processes, their systems, and again, making sure that they are measuring and tracking for success. So when we are talking about putting together a strategic business plan, what are some of the key elements that need to be included in this plan?
So yeah, it's great that you mentioned that and that you work with people as well on the importance of that plan. Some people might say, oh, the business plan is just, a formality. It's not. It really needs to be a living dynamic document that outlines the structure of the business and how the business will move forward throughout its entire life. So important elements of the business plan are obviously the outline of the executive leadership. Who's going to be starting the company? Who's going to be running the company? the management structure as well. Who's going to be the managers who are going to be making the decisions for moving the company forward as it progresses. Obviously, anything related to sales and marketing, outlining those procedures. How is the marketing going to be done? What marketing channels will be used? As far as sales, what's the sales process we're going to use to talk with potential clients? Those are the big ones. Those are the really big ones, I think. Other parts are a little bit more optional, but those pieces have to be in every business plan.
Right. And I would imagine that when you sit down with your clients, you always start with those big ones, but depending on them, their goals, that's where you can start to bring in and massage in some of the other ones, whether you're working with a larger organization, entrepreneurs, and, things like that. But again, I always like to think about the strategic plan almost like a compass, a map. If I were to get into a car and drive from San Francisco to New York City, not only would I lay out my roadmap, I would be checking it again and again and again. Do you find it's the same thing with a strategic business plan? Should we be reviewing it? And if so, how often do you think we should be reviewing it?
Yeah, one of the big mistakes that people make, what business owners make with plans is they design them, then they put it into a binder, then they'll put it on a shelf or in a drawer, it's tucked away, you never see it again. Like I said, the plan needs to change. It needs to be reviewed at least every year, or as the company changes strategically, or perhaps the industry changes. So when something changes, the business plan needs to change with it, and that document needs to be available to all the stakeholders in the company, because, like you said, it provides vision. Without that kind of vision, they don't know which direction to go, and that should be the business plan should provide the roadmap as well. I'm working, I have worked for just recently with a company, as a manufacturing company. And one of the things that we did was revise their their business plan, because they had it for 5 years and they had it in a drawer. And after we revised it, they really started to see why, how it's important to keep it as a current document.
Absolutely. I have people call that, it's shelf help. They, put these things together and then put it up on the shelf. And, it's so true. And I think sometimes people they think they have the plan and it can never be changed. And I really appreciate what you said about sometimes, again, the market or the industry changes. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and based upon the economy or, changes that we see in the structure of how business is done, the beauty is not just in doing the plan, it's in the revisiting of the plan, because you have to adapt and evolve. And the last thing I want is for people, if they're going over a calendar year, the last thing I want is for them to get to November and say, oh, that didn't work. I wish I would have changed that in April. So again, being able to always do these checks and balances and to have the flexibility and the freedom to change it and alter it when it makes good business sense. But if they don't have a partner like you guiding them, it's hard for them to start to understand and differentiate what should and shouldn't, be altered. So I think it's really powerful that you're doing that with them. Now, we also know in the reviewing that we're doing, we start to learn things. We learn what works, and we also learn some of the things that don't work for us. So we have to start to look at the numbers. We have to start to look at the analytics. So in your words, I would love to hear, what is the role that the market analytics can play in helping people put together, keep updated, and use their strategic plan for success?
Well, the market analytics is going to tell them exactly where the opportunities are for the business to go. Obviously, if whatever the profit or whatever the product or service is, you need to make sure that you're selling it to a market that wants it. There has to be demand for it. And oftentimes businesses will launch a product without understanding whether the product actually has demand or if it can be profitably produced and sold. So they end up losing money on that product. And the market, if properly gauged ahead of time, will tell them that.
That's great. Excellent. So, Rob, you've been doing this for a while now. About how long have you been working with people on their strategic plans?
Um, 10 years
Yeah,
with
it's a good
people,
amount
yeah.
of time. So you've seen, all different types of, and again, changes in the industry. So tell us a little bit about your company. Where can people find you, and what are some of the things that, are really your areas of expertise?
So I like working with companies on their operations issues. I love digging in to help them solve the problems that have them stuck, and then also working with them on designing projects to help them reach the goals. They started a company for a specific reason, and I want to help them reach those goals. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also call me at 770-256-8216. You can email me at rob@profitpartnergroup.com. And of course, my website is profitpartnergroup.com.
Fantastic. Just in closing, this idea of vision, you brought it up again. Having a partner like you, it's going to help people to not just design the plan, but to make sure that it's connected and it's in alignment with their vision, because that vision is really what drives us long term. So, Rob, thank you so much for being here and for sharing value. And for those of you that are following along, I hope you took a lot of notes. Remember, your strategic plan is your roadmap. Take the time to not just put it together, but to review it on a regular basis. So thanks for following. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Be Productive. As a productivity strategist, one of the things I talk about all the time is my clarity success method. And when we break down that word and get to the T stands for tracking and measuring. And this is what we're talking about today, because you can gather all the information you want, but if you're not tracking the key areas and analyzing those areas, it's really going to be a challenge for you to level up and to be and work at the highest level of productivity. So to help me with the discussion about tracking and accountability in your tracking is growth strategist Mark Wetzig. Mark, welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yes, you always bring so much value, because again, this is an area that you have been living in for well over 25 years. So when it comes to really these growth strategies and knowing what as business owners and leaders we should be tracking, man, this is your area of genius. So let's dive right in. What do you feel are the most important methods for effective tracking, in order for us to progress and grow our businesses?
Well, the traditional method is really, what we refer to as KPIs, key performance indicators, and those are numbers. Those are non-financial numbers. They're tracking levels of activity. Very often they're tracking ratios, because a lot of business is really driven on ratios. I have discussions with people. It's a numbers business. I said, no, it's really a ratios business, because you're measuring against some kind of optimized measurement out there. But in addition to that, there's something called outcomes and key results, OKRs, and those are targets, because you can have your financial targets, you can have your operational targets, but the business is more than that. The business is actually results. You want to reach a certain presence in the marketplace. You want to have, you're trying to establish maybe growth patterns for a number of people in your company. You're trying to capture, there's always different kinds of goals out there that are more, non-financial. So you've got to be able to track those. And what we say is you can't have a business if you don't have a target. Because the numbers are one thing, but if your target, just as they say, target market, what is your target market? Are you hitting it? How well are you hitting it? Should there be more than one target market? And then, also operationally, are you growing at the levels that you want and that you expect that you should be? Do you have enough people to cover, the complexity of your operation? So those are things that aren't necessarily numbers and financially driven. And that's one thing that we do at the very beginning of the process when we're talking to people is, not only, yes, there are numbers and what do you want to attain there, but what are the targets that you're really going after and what are you really looking for? With the advent of AI, that's really helped with being able to build more of a story, more of an operational plan that you get into where you build those targets into your plan. So it's not just a static plan, it's something with your information and your targets built into the plan. So it's personalized. And one of the beauties about AI is that you have the capability of being able to do that. So it's not just a process or a system, it's theirs. It's very personalized.
That's so good. And again, I think that we have to approach it that way. And this is why I love having somebody like you on the show, because every company is different and they're going to have different KPIs that we need to be looking at. And again, it's not just a cookie cutter approach. Now, in tracking, and I see this a lot too with people that I work with, they'll tell me, oh, I tracked last month, or I tracked, a little bit last week. The beauty of tracking is also in the consistency of it. So how
Correct.
do you help your clients ensure accountability so that they can stay consistent with their tracking? Because the numbers don't lie, but if we don't have consistent numbers, we're not going to get accurate information.
This starts to come in under the topic of change management, which, I think you're certainly aware, and anybody who's been in companies where you're trying to make changes, at sooner or later, you're going to deal with change management. And one of the biggest challenges with change management is the old accountability factor. So one of the things that I employ in that is that you have to start with habits. I mean, and there's a bunch of different material out there about habit building and so forth, but that ultimately is what change management is about, is kind of making small adjustments in your habits on a daily basis that then reflect into changes in activity and accountability. One of the things that I get into, most of my clients I'll deal with on a weekly basis. Might be brief, might be maybe 15 minutes or so, but that consistency there, you're talking about that consistency. I don't like long drawn out meetings because you have a tendency, like a lot of meetings in person, where you'll drift off in one subject or the other. Compressing your time into, say, 20 or 25 minutes gets things to the point. Let's deal with the things that are most relevant. What does that force? That forces people to be accountable. You have to be accountable. Here's the 3 things that we're going to cover next week. Because in addition to coaching people through a process, I want to facilitate that next step so that there's momentum. Because if you start building momentum with people and they see progress with numbers, they see progress financially, typically the accountability starts to come into line there because there's an incentive. They see it and they want more. They see it and they want more. So that's one thing that I really work on with accountability is, if you have to really start coaching people through accountability, that's tough. So it's one of those things that really needs to evolve and grow as the business is going and changing. And it's something I addressed from the very start is accountability is probably going to, pop its head up at some point in time. Mm-hmm. Let's understand what that's going to look like so that we can address it sooner than later.
Definitely. So let's talk more about, this idea of getting someone like you, a business coach, a strategist, someone to really be in your corner. What role do you find, that a business coach can really play in both monitoring and guiding your clients' progress towards their results?
First of all, clarifying what the overall plan is so that there's consensus, there's agreement. They're not, the owner's not heading off on one track and you think they're heading off on another one. So it's constantly checking that we're, proverbial on the same page. But then also confirming and then celebrating accomplishments. This is good. One thing I do that a lot of people don't do is I want to understand what they're good at to begin with, because there's a reason that they got into business and they've reached a certain level of success. A lot of coaching people start to think, let's fix what's broken. I say, possibly, but let's build on what works.
Mm.
And if something worked in one area of the business, can it work in another area of the business? So again, it's that momentum. You want to keep momentum. So it's celebrating successes, and as we've talked about before, course correcting sooner than later, but then also facilitating whatever that next step is going to be. Here's what you need to be aware of. So we have things going. You know, it's tough to multitask, and you really have to focus. Business owners get stuck in that where they're trying to multitask and then nothing gets done really in the end of the day. So it's, you know, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, focus here and there, focus on this, focus on that, because that helps with being able to facilitate their week to week, day to day, and then week to week progress with things. And again, try to stay concise on everything.
Yeah. And what I really try to impart, you know, with so many of the people that I coach, that I train, that I lead and speak to, is the value of a coach. You know, I'm a coach, you know, you're a coach. I have coaches too, because again, they really do. And I think it's that idea of, again, the guiding, the monitoring, and really helping to make sure we're going down the right path, because you're right. Some things work. And if they work, a good coach is going to help you leverage that in other areas. And if things are not working, a good coach is going to help you analyze why it's not working so that you can either adjust it, pivot, or possibly go down a different way. So, you know, Mark, you have really been doing this for so long, and you've helped so many companies be able to bring these ideas into play. I know that there's going to be people out there that are going to want to, you know, pick your brain a little bit more. They may want to find you. And I know on your website, you have some free resources in addition to information on just working with you. So tell us a little bit about where people can find you and some of the things that they can access on your website.
Sure. My website is reignitegrowthcoach.com. And in that website, there's a lot of information there. But one of the things, as you scroll down just a little bit in the middle of the website, is a link to a book that I wrote. It's on 12 growth strategies. So it's really an outline of how to drive business, all the different aspects of sales and marketing, and what it can do for your business. It's not necessarily a how-to, it's how it can really impact your business. So it's really things to think about, and it's useful not only to see that at the very beginning of the process, but also referred to as you keep going on. Then secondly, my email address is markw@reignitegrowthcoach.com. And then my cell and text number is 303-921-3440.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, Mark, thanks again for sharing so much knowledge and wisdom. And for those of you watching, remember, you know, you can do the work, but if you don't track it, you're not going to know what's working and what's not working. So make sure that you are staying consistent, that you are holding yourself accountable, and maybe even looking into getting some help with a strategic coach like Mark, like me, like others that are out there. Because when you start to track and you start to gain the information, that's what's going to help you work at your highest level, and that's what's going to help you be productive. So stay tuned. We'll be right back for more. Welcome back to Be Productive. I'm your host, Clara Capano. We know that in business, the human component is always going to be needed. But one of the things that helps us to maintain a high level of productivity so that we can actually serve at a higher level is technology. So what we want to do is we want to start investigating. We want to start learning and educating ourselves on the right types of technology that are going to help us to enhance our businesses so that we can maintain that high level of value. This pertains even to the systems around bookkeeping. So to talk with us about some of the things that we need to keep in mind with technology and how we can integrate that with our bookkeeping is my friend Nora with Nora's Books. Nora, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Clara. Happy to be here.
Yes. So we're talking about technology, software, and how it can integrate so that we can, again, serve at a higher level possible. So talk to me, because you've been in the bookkeeping and the financial world for over 20 years. How can modern bookkeeping, the software that we have with modern bookkeeping, how can it enhance our level of productivity for business owners and leaders?
So it will save us time, money, resources. You want to make sure actually you utilize it to run reports. So when you have the report, any report you can have like in a second when you use technology. I know a lot of people still use Excel, but they don't know what they're losing. You cannot actually run reports as fast. No matter how complicated is your Excel, it can be a resource to at the end feed into the software, but you cannot rely on Excel or any other program. Technology is important in order to see those reports. You're entering these data. If you're not able to run reports, you can't really scale. So it's going to help you scale your business. It's going to help you save in time and human resources.
Fantastic. You know, I know that when it comes to all of these, one size does not fit all, but in general, especially with smaller businesses, are there a few key features that, you know, business owners should be looking for when it comes to bringing in and integrating their software systems with bookkeeping?
Sure. So my favorite one, of course, a cloud-based, because now like everyone wants to be able to work from anywhere. So if it's a cloud-based, you can enter your system from anywhere. Well, I would actually be careful. If you are working in a cafe, I wouldn't open any financials. So for me, for example, when I go work outside, I work on my marketing side. I write email marketing, social media posts, but I do not do bookkeeping. I do not do taxes for my clients or for myself. I keep that when I'm working in an office or my home, like somewhere secure that I know no one's gonna get into my data. So you want to be careful of that. Like even if it's a cloud-based, but you still have to take the measures to protect yourself and your clients, your company. And then integration, you want the software to be able to integrate with the softwares you are using. So because it's going to make it so much easier for you. And one very, very important thing, yeah, I kept it to the last one, but it's not less important. It's actually, for me, it's very important because reporting, a lot of software is there, but not every software has the capability to run the reports that you will need to run your business. That's why you need to make sure the software you're using run the reports that you need. And you might not know what you need. Talk to your accountant.
Exactly. That's where an expert like you comes into play, because again, you know, we don't know what we need. We don't know what we don't need. And as we're hunting for all of those things and the right one, we're going to lose time. We're going to make mistakes. So I actually want to transition this now into this item of time and errors, because we want to, you know, minimize these things that are going to keep us from being productive. And you brought this up earlier in the conversation. But how does technology, and having, again, the right technology in place, how does it really save us time and help us minimize errors?
Yeah, so basically it eliminates a human error because there's a system talking to each other. So if we want to do something, like we can just like verify instead to be like having someone enter the information and another person like verifying, or maybe we don't have that person. And then now we have that error and affecting our end product with our financial statements. And that's going to affect our decisions, and that's the domino effect keeps going. So if we have the systems doing that for us, then we minimize, like now, okay, we don't necessarily have all that error right now. So minimize error, the human error that for sure is going to happen. Save time, of course, because now, like I said, like we don't need like several people checking in. You only need one person maybe to verify these things. Reduce payroll cost because we don't need so many people, because remember, payroll cost, it's not only the money you're giving the person, it's going to cost like almost double, like 30-40%. It depends on how much benefit you offer. So you can, instead of hiring people with entry-level skills, now you can hire more individuals like a CFO, like someone like in a higher skill that gonna benefit your bottom line in the business, that's gonna help you scale. So it can provide a lot, enormous actually benefits for your business. And finances is a main component. I always tell people, like, you need in business, you need to have sales, marketing, and finances taken care of in order to make sure you scale and actually keep in existence. So you're not going after a couple of years.
Yeah. You know, what I love so much about this conversation is it really does bring back the component of time. And, you know, time is one of the most precious commodities that we have. And when you, again, are utilizing the right technology, it's going to free up your time so you can spend more time with your clients one-on-one, building those relationships. But again, the systems are going to be making sure that things are not falling through the cracks. And again, by looking at the reports that the technology can provide you, you can make better decisions rather than making those mistakes along the way. So again, it just comes full circle. So, you know, Nora, I love how you are providing all of these, you know, ideas and this knowledge to us. You know, you are a wealth of knowledge with over 20 years in the business. And I know that people out there are going to want to learn more from you and get guidance from you. So tell us where our viewers can find you so that if they want to reach out and learn more, they know how to get a hold of you.
Sure, you can go to norasbooks.com/contact and they can book a Zoom call with me over there. And also they can follow me on social media. I do a lot of YouTubes, all that linked into my website. And I also recently started a podcast that I'm going on Apple every morning at 6:30 a.m. But they definitely, if they want to work with me, they want to book a call with me so we can talk.
Beautiful. Nora, thanks so much for your time today. And again, just appreciate you so much. And for all of you out there, I hope you took some good notes, because remember, technology is our friend. It can really enhance everything we're doing, but it's never going to replace the human component. So use your systems, use the technology to allow you to free yourself up so that you can be investing more of your time in the areas of connecting with your people, because the right technology, the right bookkeeping behind you, the right systems are going to help you be even more purposeful and productive as you grow and scale your business. Stay tuned, because we'll be right back for more Be Productive. Thank you so much for watching Be Productive. You know, there was a common theme going through all the segments, and the idea that some things work and some things do not work. And as business owners, we need to start paying attention to what is working and what isn't working by doing things such as the data mapping, by having that strategic planning for long-term sustainable success, and for really having systems in place for tracking and measuring. We need those three things to start assessing what is and isn't working. Because if something is working, by all means, how can we keep it going? And if something isn't working, how can we pivot? How can we adapt it, adjust it, so that we can make sure we're not doing that definition of insanity? And at the end of it, how can we marry what we're doing with the latest and the greatest and the best tips in technology? So I hope that you found value in today's show, because what we covered is really going to help you as a leader and as a business owner to not only put more money towards the bottom line, but to help you be productive. So thank you again for following. We'll see you next time for another episode of Be Productive.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.